Hello everyone and welcome back for week 5 of the ENG1520A8107 for online asynchronous. The week 5 on here, guys, I got a couple of things. First off, my apologies on posting later on this. I had some Wi-Fi issues on this. Thought I was on a system that was running okay, and then it turned out it switched over to my access on my phone through hotspot and wasn't loading anything. I addressed a couple of different issues. One of the main things I'll note here right at the bat is that every file that I had that was submitted, that was accessible, and was, I was going to say in on time, but most of the ones even that were late, if you were in contact with me and it was something we discussed through messaging, we moved forward with either, credit consideration, point deductions for late on some of them. For some of them, there were things that we were discussing already, including a student with Wi-Fi access on the date of submissions. Those are things that I think have all been addressed for everyone. I do still have a couple of issues where some students submitted pages, files, and PDFs. So remember, folks, when we have this instructional component on here, when we're talking about the elements in the syllabus, and right here I have it scrolled down a little bit, make sure that you guys remember that some of the requirements in here include the access to Microsoft Word or equivalent. The OCC system does not will only accept and guarantee the compatibility with those documents, and I am having some serious issues with students with their PDF files and pages files. Pages will not even be read by the system. Google Docs, for the most part, will not be read by the system, at least not in terms of when they go through an ETS scan. That's our system's equivalent of having something like grammar and spell check in Word. You know, you can turn that on in your Microsoft Word document. I also want to note for you guys, remember, you cannot use anything of generative AI or Grammarly, but it is no issue for you to turn on spell check and grammar check in your Microsoft Word account. That doesn't go through and do generative AI of any kind. That just does a review of the content like our ETS. And the only way the ETS is effective, even for minor things like spelling and run-ons, is if the file is in a Microsoft Word format, so that I can actually make sure that it converts and is compatible with the entirety of the system and is read correctly by the system. Now, the other thing that I had open here on the syllabus that I wanted to show you guys is the piece that comes up at the end of the semester, the cultural analysis. Will open up next week with these pieces, and this will be the last thing that overlaps between two assignments. But this one is a fairly straightforward and easy piece to do, and I'm giving you guys a couple of options on this. The materials on this will include a summary outline. The draft on here, I'm gonna make this an optional, or not an optional. Two different options for this. There can be either the very short draft that you submit as the paper at the end. It's not something we go through peer review with or anything like that. You'll see when you read the requirements on that next Monday. It's a fairly straightforward and easy thing to do, and it's all based on things in your personal interest. It's essentially you telling me about something of cultural significance that you can explain the impact of it. And I'm going to have an option there between having a draft of an essay or a short presentation of slides that you can submit, meaning something of a PowerPoint or a Prezi or things like that. Either way, you're looking at the summary and outline piece that you're submitting being the main component, and the final submission of the presentation or overview in a short draft. Either one's probably going to be no more than 500 words on that final component. Okay, it's a fairly straightforward thing to do, and students usually do find it to be one of the funner assignments. Now, going back to the home page on this, for week 5, what I was saying with week 4 on those submissions, I do have some of you I couldn't post anything on there for the feedback on rhetorical analysis because, again, I have either pages, files, or PDFs, and they're simply not reading through. Sometimes a PDF will go through at least in part, like if it was on diagnostic, it wasn't as significant. okay? But with the other ones, it is, because I have to be able to process it through the full system. Now, in week 4, we had the introduction here of the submission of the summary and working thesis, followed by the primary points of support. I saw that everybody but 2 got those in. Now, we did have a couple of different issues on these things, and I did get a few messages from students that I certainly understand what was going on with those, and you having some tech issues and a little bit of overlap between. I had a message about a work situation and everything else. So I did adjust that and give 1 more day on the summary and working thesis and primary points of support. I want to remind you guys, if I ever do change dates like this, including this one, if you already did submit one, but there was something you still wanted to modify, fix, change, update, particularly now that everyone has feedback on everything else that they submitted, by all means, you still have until tomorrow evening at 11:30 p.m. to give me that summary and working thesis and primary points of support. And this week, as I'm grading those and putting feedback on them, I will go with the most recent submission of the file. Okay? Now, for the rhetorical analysis final draft, everyone does have their feedback, with the exception of a couple of people where I had file formats that I couldn't process. Again, if you're submitting pages, PDFs, or Google Docs, I can't do anything with getting that through the system, so there's no guarantee it'll be able to be readable. What I did on those guys is in the grade category of your feedback file, if you go to the submission content for it, in the feedback window where I comment to you, it says in there, I usually mark them anywhere between 1 and 5 points, depending on what I can see. If I can see that there is a file there, and I can verify that it's actually a file that looks like the size of one, I typically put 5 points. If I can't verify it, I usually just put 1. And the file submission points on there, I make a note that if you message me, if you guys address that, submit the correct file, and then up here at the top, remember, send me an instant message, not email. Send me an instant message letting me know that you made that mistake and you addressed it. I will go back through and try to address that as soon as I possibly can, hopefully within the next day or 2 if you get those addressed. It's just some of you using things like Pages and Google Docs. If you're going to insist on not having Microsoft or whether it's standalone Word or 365, you're going to have to learn how to export as a Word document. There's nothing that we can maintain compatibility with if you don't do that. So that those things aside, now in week 5, everyone has submitted summary with working thesis and primary points of support. For those of you, I have only had 2 issues in this class so far with generative AI, and those are currently under review and going to be addressed with those individual students. Just remember, don't utilize anything like that. Our system, while ChatGPT, while people think that things like that are progressing on a daily basis, it's not. It's just simply self-learning through some of the same cycling of information and siloing information that it's been working on already. The detection areas are getting more efficient by the day. We now have detection that's applied here that goes to the coding level. You can't even use anything where you've gotten it from a generative AI system without our system now being able to see time stamping of the coded language, even copy and pasting things. Not that going aside the copy and pasting will help anything on that submission, because it's still going to grab the timestamp coding. But try to make sure, guys, you're not utilizing anything that would get you into that area, including that Grammarly or Grammarly Plus. Now, for week 5, we are to the research paper outline with abstract and works cited. I have 10 sources minimum on here, guys. It's going to be 15 for the paper. This week, you'll need 10 sources minimum. Due by the 11:30 p.m. on the 10th. In the 4th week, you already had this with primary points of support. And if these were done correctly on your summary and working thesis and primary points of support, if you completed those all the way, when you go to your outline here, and I'm going to go to the Dropbox now so that we're clear on this. The Dropbox here for the summary and working thesis outline abstract with works cited. We have this file here with the overview video. Another quick note on here, it refers to a date on here. Don't worry about these dates that are marked on here. I'll update that and change it. I didn't realize that was still on there from a prior term. But the research outline template, Make sure that you guys read through the instructions one more time. There were a number of students with the rhetorical analysis where you clearly didn't read all of these overview instructions. I had a number of students on rhetorical analysis where you were talking about logos and pathos and ethos as rhetorical devices, as noted in that drop box, which maybe I'll stop on that one before I get out of this instructional video for the week, but it was explicitly stated not to make that mistake as though depicting those as rhetorical devices. Those are rhetorical concepts or proofs. It also kind of shows that you didn't read that section of the reading assignment either. That is stated in the chapter on rhetorical devices. But this outline with abstract and works cited, if you open up this document, make sure you follow through on here. The same thing as the prior submission requirements. You got to have full sentences for everything and fill out every one of these categories and keep it in the template form. Do not change anything about this. All you do is remove the examples before writing your own. I use music therapy as a topic example, and you can see the general to specific, your topic and thesis. If you did the summary and working thesis correctly, that content will already qualify, or should already qualify, as your topic and thesis section of this outline. You just have to come up with a general to specific statement. In bodies 1, 2, and 3 on here, thinking about major supports, I have a quote format and quote requirement. As of now, you'll see here on you have an opening for major supporting detail. Quote format indicates in the drop box there that you make a claim. That is the major supporting detail. Quote should be used to support the claim. Do not give me full titles of articles in the introduction to your quote. If you're going to give me anything about the title of the article, just give me an abbreviated version. It only has to be enough words from the article title so that I can find it in reference to other pieces on your works cited page. You give a major supporting claim, followed by the quote itself that supports it. Remember, no block quotes are allowed, so don't go over 4 lines of the primary point of the page. Give the actual last name and page number of the author, and then the quote defense that follows it as a minor support. Every time you use a quote, this has to be followed. This is intro quote, give quote, explain or defend quote, and you can use the wording that's the examples of wording that are in there. Just make sure that you guys follow through on that. I will also accept a little bit of paraphrasing and summary on this. Make sure it's not overdone. The majority of this should be your wording in your work. Body paragraphs 1, 2, and 3 should be fully detailed here. You guys, with these layouts like this, you can, if you're doing it like this, you don't have to keep a labeling on here of major supporting detail, or if you would like to keep it in framed order for yourself, you can give it like this. Keep the numbering for these and make sure you're using transitional elements, but I don't have to have this exact wording on it. I think it helps you all to stay on track with these. The conclusion, then, you follow through on the basic principles of conclusion, and the abstract comes afterwards. The only way you can write an abstract is after you've completed the rest of the paper. Remember, the abstract is where you can make an announcement statement. An announcement statement says this report gives this information. You can make an announcement like that, and you explain the different elements of an abstract as follows, and it should only be done afterwards because you won't know what's going to be in the abstract until you've 1, conducted and understood the research, and 2, laid out in the paper itself what you're going to be presenting to your reader. Okay? Then the works cited page should be down here as follows, and just like the requirement on primary points of support, they need to be in MLA format. So that means anytime we have a citation on here, it's got to be left justified on the indent at the margin, and every line after the first in your alphabetically ordered works cited entries, every line after the first in each entry, and one individual entry has to be a hanging indent. There's a chapter page in the reading on MLA that shows a visual of this, and I went over that on last week's overview. Make sure you guys follow through with that. Now, as I was stating just real quick before we go on this, we had last week with the rhetorical analysis for the summary and outline, rough drafting, and the instructions on these. We're talking about the different devices, and here in the instruction, here is the first reminder on this. All work must be in third-person objective viewpoint. Logos, ethos, and pathos refer to types of appeals. They are the concepts or proofs. They are not devices. See the student example essay that's included, okay? All right. So that's it for this week, guys. There's no additional reading. There are 2 new overview videos for library research, but the reading should now all be your full text available peer-reviewed sources. See you guys.